What's going on, guys? Thank you so much for tuning back into the Colby Health and Wellness Podcast. This is part of my effort to give you a zero cost to consumer platform so that you can finally understand these pieces of your health that you don't quite have the answers to, and we can get you real answers so you can make a noticeable difference and change in your health and in your life. Today, we're going to talk about the history of chiropractic, and you're going to wonder, how the hell does that relate to my health? Well, it relates to your health because there's a lot of people that have a lot of really poor misconceptions about chiropractic. Some things that are true and some things that are not so true. So I, as a chiropractic student that just finished my second year of chiropractic school, I'm going to deliver some of those truths and tell you about some of the real myths and give you the overall honest opinion of what I can so that you can take that information and say, do I need to go see a chiropractor? Do I need to be going to someone else? And you can make that decision for yourself. Keep in mind, obviously I am a chiropractic student, so I will have a slight bias towards chiropractic because of the things that I've seen and also the methods that I have been taught in school. Just keep that in mind. As far as the history of chiropractic goes, there's one huge massive thing that a lot of people like to say is that the founder of chiropractic founded chiropractic and literally learned and heard about chiropractic through talking to ghosts. And I will clear this up right now. That is absolutely true. Yes, Dr. D.D. Palmer, which is the original founder of chiropractic and founded Palmer College of Medical School. And the main one is in Davenport. I'm in the one in Florida here. But it's absolutely true. He founded that and he figured out about it when he was speaking to dead physicians. And he was figuring out what he wanted to do, because before that, he was something called a magnetic healer. And even for me, that concept's a little out there. I'm not gonna lie to you. They basically took giant rare earth magnets and they would put them over people in certain ways and fashions. And there were people that didn't need a cane after this, or they were able to get help with this ailment or that ailment or whatever their condition or their issue was. It's absolutely insane. And he actually had a pretty good rate of healing people. I don't know how, but I mean, it seems crazy to me. But I mean, hey, take it for what it is. Like, if you can help someone, you can help someone. And that's one of the biggest things I've learned in school is there's so many critiques, and we'll get into more of them later. But it's like, to hell does it matter how exactly it works and this and that? I mean, I want to know, but if I'm helping someone, I'm helping someone, So keep that in mind. Like, if someone can actually fix your condition, the hell does it matter how you got there? They can fix your condition. So keep that in mind when you're trying to pick a physician. So yes, he did figure out about chiropractic through what's called a seance. And the only thing that is kind of the big caveat to that is that, two big things. Number one, literally everyone and their brother was doing this at this point in history. This is the late 1800s. There's a lot of people doing seances because the Civil War had just happened. A ton of people had lost their lives in the Civil War. I believe the figure's something like 1 in 5 at the time, or like that many families were affected. Like, so many people were doing these seances at the time. And it's absolutely crazy to think about. But I mean, like, there were people basing legal documentation of, like, what do we want to do with the farm? Who do we want to put in the trust? Like, this shit was all being figured out about and, like, determined through these seances, which is absolutely crazy if you think about it. So my point is, it wasn't just D.D. Palmer being this one crazy random dude that decided, oh, hey, I'm gonna talk to these ghosts and figure out what to do next as far as, check it out, Palmer College of Chiropractic, kind of cool. But it's not like he was the only guy doing this, right? I mean, this was everyone's doing at the time. So it was considered to be widely normal at the time to do a seance. Now, here's the other thing, right? When we look back at history and we look at what people were doing as far as medicine, number one, you were getting morphine and cough syrup in the early 1900s. You were getting morphine in your cough syrup and heroin in there too to fix your common cold. You would give that to your kids before bed. I mean, the stories about how medicine used to work are batch crazy stories about medicine and how it worked. So my point is, anyways, going back before that, on the scale of like, oh, this happened here, this happened here. Like, there were a whole bunch of people, and a lot of them went by the term bone setter. If you look it up in the history, you'll figure out a little bit about it. It's basically people were applying traction to certain joints. People were pushing on certain joints. Some scripts and texts talk about cavitation, and the way that we understand what cavitation is now, we believe that's what they were saying. But a lot of people were just getting like basically manual therapy. Like, I'm gonna stretch out your calf, I'm gonna stretch out your hamstring, or I'm gonna distract your hip joint because you might have some sort of, intracapsular tension or something. And there's a ton of different texts in a ton of different societies, all the way back through like the Greeks and the Romans, talking about this stuff. Actually, Chiro in Egyptian means hand. So we know they were practicing chiropractic long before we have what we consider to be chiropractic. I think the best way to put it is that D.D. Palmer found something, made it like popular, and then they figured out like, oh, holy shit, this actually works, right? And that's the other thing is, yes, it does work, because D.D. Palmer was really like super about philosophy, right? He was like everything comes from thoughts, traumas, and toxins. Like, that's how the body gets hurt. And if you think about it, like, thoughts, all your psychological issues, right? Traumas, physical traumas, getting hit, a car accident, or getting bucked off a horse, or tearing your knee during a soccer game, right? And then toxins, what you're eating, what's going into your body every day, and that fuel that you're providing for your body to become what you want it to. Do you want it to become a race car? Do you want it to become a Honda Fit that, and no offense to anyone that drives a Honda Fit, but like, you're not going 0 to 60 in 2 seconds, right? Like, keep that in mind. So my point is, his big thing was thoughts, traumas, and toxins. And if you think about it, and you don't worry about what chiropractic is, like if a doc just told you that, I'd be like, he's pretty spot on, it's pretty reasonable. I'd say that that's a pretty great way to look at it and think about it. So, yeah, D.D. Palmer did discover it through a seance, and he did discover it through talking to a dead medical physician. And by the way, in the beginning of what we consider chiropractic school, number one, the Palmer Institution was the first medical institution this side of the Mississippi to have an x-ray machine. Now, obviously, there was a lot of work in defining what x-rays were, and, in the beginning, people's hands were, like, literally melting off from x-ray machines, right? Before they were able to refine it and figure out, like, oh, there's, like, actual radiation in this, and we can't just, like, hit this beam on here for 15 minutes, we got to give it, like, a fast go in, like, a quarter second, with, like, 400 milliamps and, however many kVp, but anyways, I'm losing you there. That's a story for a different day. But they were using medical technology such as x-ray literally right when it came out, because they were trying to figure out what was going on in the body and what was able to be done to fix things, right? So there were 2 massive things that happened, okay? Number one, there's B.J. Palmer, which is Dr. D.D. Palmer's son, and we'll get to him in a second. But the other big thing that you got to think about is osteopaths. Now, a doctor of osteopathic medicine today is almost no different than an MD. They technically, most schools, I have a really good buddy that's in DO school right now, and he's like, yeah, our manipulation classes are a completely different theology, a completely different theory on what's happening. A lot of them correlate it to blood flow and enhancing blood flow. The chiropractic side of it says it should be nerve flow and conduction that you're trying to improve to help the nervous system. And so there's these competing theories out there, but the point is this, right? DO school and DC school were almost one and the same once upon a time. It's just that when Western medicine, the Rockefellers, which is a whole nother story in and of itself, basically MD school, DO school, and DC school, right? Well, at DC school and DO school, Doctor of Osteopathic Medicine and Doctor of Chiropractic were basically, one and the same. Once upon a time where they were very similar, right? They both adjusted with different theologies and different methodologies, but they were doing roughly the same thing. Then, once the giant split happens, We have this giant foundation of antibiotics and Western medicine and all these different things come about. World War II, we start getting penicillin, we start getting antibiotics, we start getting, some antivirals a little bit later in the game. All these different things that come about, and we're like, oh, well, chiropractic takes a road away from that a little bit. And part of it is the beginning of chiropractic. What's frustrating was the way that they had to skirt around the laws and say that this isn't technically medicine, this is a religion. That's how they got around a lot of the laws in the beginning, because in the beginning, chiropractic was not a legal accepted way to be a licensed physician in all 50 states. And still, not all 50 states you have full physician status. I would say over half of the states we have full physician status. So morally, legally, and ethically, you are a doctor. And you hold full physician status in over half of the states. But at that point in time, it was like, oh, this year, Louisiana and Texas got their laws passed that you can be a doctor and practice chiropractic in those states. So in the beginning, they had to frame themselves as a religion, and then that definitely pulled them away from this giant Western medicine that we know today as like, oh, your MDs, your DOs, your surgery, your pills, your this, your that. And so pretty much ever since that split, they've just split further and further away. Kind of like before, my parents used to tell me, like, people before 9/11 were like, oh my gosh, people could like agree with each other, people could work things out. And then after that, it became the Republicans and the Democrats, and they kind of just grew further and further away, and it just divided the country after 9/11. That's what my parents told me. I was only 3 when the towers, or maybe 4. I was born in 1997, so. I know, right? I feel like I should have like a 401k or something maxed out by now. Anyways, so my point is, the DC route kind of took this way. This doctor of chiropractic took this way. MD and DO took this way. And the other thing is that in the beginning, a lot of the DCs were super against Western medicine. I don't think they realized how blended the culture would be today, and just how important Western medicine is. Because let's face it, if I get in a car accident, this is the exact words of a chiropractor that I don't want to say studied under. I kind of studied under, but I worked for the guy, right? Dr. Baker in Cincinnati, Ohio. He said this, and it's him and his brother that run this amazing clinic. And they said, hey, look, if I get in a car accident, I'm not going to say, hey, doc, can you adjust me? I'm going to go to the damn hospital. Like, there's times to go to a chiropractor, and there's times to go to the hospital and figure out what's going on, right? I would say, think about your DC as this way of medicine that is very low in terms of its invasiveness, relatively high in terms of its ability to help a large number of people, and quite low in terms of its potential for harm, right? And I'll just give you a quick, potential for harm type of thing. A lot of people say, oh, well, stroke. That's the next big thing on the list, is a stroke, right? And we'll go back to BJ Palmer after this, but people say, oh, if a chiropractor adjusts you, you're going to get a stroke in the cervical, right? Well, actually, they grab the spine, and we'll take a look, and I'll show you, right? So what they're talking about is they're concerned about what's called this vertebral artery here. You can see it in the red. You guys can see it much better than I can. But it comes in at C6, right? Or in the cervical spine at the 6th vertebrae, right? So we have this one C7 right here, and this one C6. So if I'm taking you through a range of motion, I'm going up, over, back, and I throw it, I am causing a cavitation in these joints back here, and that's a way different topic, way different talk altogether. But my point is, those arteries, there is a chance that those arteries can be dissected, partially dissected, or fully dissected, or severed, or cut in some way. It can happen, right? It's possible. I'm not saying it's not. But the thing is, the chances, they have done multiple meta-analyses on this because it's a big concern in chiropractic, and a lot of people are worried about it, right? And so what does the research say? Well, the research, fortunately, this is one thing we actually do have freaking research on. Well, that's a topic for later too. But my point is, the research says you getting a cervical adjustment and you're worried about a stroke, the chances of you having a stroke are somewhere between 1 in 100,000 to 1 in 5 million or more. Most estimates say it's roughly a 1 in 1 million chance. I say there was one study that found it could be possibly 1 in 100,000. And there are other studies that says it's, less than 1 in 5 million. There's a lot of analyses that say that it is roughly, this seems to be, once they started doing more research on it, because they were worried about the 1 in 100,000 number, they started doing more research and they said, yeah, this is closer to about 1 in a million are your chances of that. So, getting struck by lightning, way better chance of that. Getting bit by a shark, way better chance of that. Having a serious adverse side effect from a medication that you take in the United States is somewhere between 1 in 300 and 1 in 1,000. That's insane. 1 in 300 to 1 in 1,000 chance that you take a medication and you experience serious adverse side effect. This is defined as something that can land you in the hospital, something that can permanently maim or kill you potentially, is 1 in 300 to 1 in 1,000. And you're worried about me going to your neck. The chances are less than 1 in a million. That's what the research says. Absolutely insane. And it floors me people still worry about it. It's just goes to show that a lot of people just listen to what they hear, and rightfully so. Like, that's how we're kind of hardwired as people. But it's not true. It's literally, most estimates are saying, and there's even more research coming out and it's saying it might even be less than 1 in a million. So we'll get more research as it comes out. But let's get back to the history of it. But that was a big concern of mine, right? So let's get back to the history of it. There's a lot of big things that happen along the way, but my point is this. We're going to go back and we're going to talk about Dr. D.D. Palmer, right? So the guy grew up in Canada. He came to Iowa, and he dropped out. He was a beekeeper. He was this, he was that, and then he finally stumbled on magnetic healing. The guy was an entrepreneur by heart. He was a freaking entrepreneur through and through, okay? He did magnetic healing, and then he founded chiropractic school through the seance, you're right. And then he actually bounced around a little bit after that. He went a couple of different places and tried to start a couple other chiropractic schools. And fun fact, the reason why chiropractors in states like, I believe it's Oregon, or no, it's 2 states right beside each other. It's like Idaho and Oregon. Like, one has insanely strict rules and one has insanely lax rules. And the reason is because in one of those states, Dr. D.D. Palmer went and he founded a school there. And in that school, they said, well, we want to be able to help obstetrics and pediatrics. So in that state, that's why there's such lax laws. Like, a chiropractor can help, can prescribe antibiotics in certain cases. A chiropractor can, give stitches after birth. A chiropractor can help with birth. A chiropractor can deliver a baby in states like that, And obviously these are very rural states, so the rules honestly make sense because any physician that's able to help with, delivering a baby, that's a very traumatic and significant event in someone's life. Yeah, you probably want some help there. I don't really give a damn if you're an RN or an NP or a PA or I'll take the help, And a chiropractor makes perfect sense. So glad those rules are there. But anyways, going back to it. So D.D. Palmer founded, Palmer College of Chiropractic. And then, honestly, he was a pretty terrible father by the accounts that we have. But then B.J. Palmer stepped in. And B.J. Palmer really made chiropractic into what it is. Because D.D. Palmer had these theories and this philosophy and these ideas, and it was very much like a religion thing, right? It was like this cult, right? It was chiropractic. BJ Palmer comes in and says, "Ah, no, no. This is modern. This is real. This fucking works." And he proved it. And a lot of his things throughout the, like, it's something like 50 years or something crazy that he was doing adjustments, that he was helping people, that he was performing all this research. He figured out so much about nerve conduction, nerve flow, and how when we are manipulating. A lot of his work actually was with these two bones at the top of the skull here, right? So you've got the base of the skull, right? So you got the occiput here, right? So this is this dish right here, so to speak, and then you've got the atlas bone, right? This is the first bone. This is C1 in the cervical spine, and then below it you have the axis bone, or C2, right? A lot of his research was based on these top two bones, like the occiput, atlas, and axis. A lot of his research was based up there, and thank God for it, because his big thing was upper cervical manipulation, which we have determined through a decent bit of research now, partly and thanks to him, is that there are a massive amount of mechanoreceptors and receptors in the upper neck there. And for just about everything that you could think of, in the short term, to some degree or another, upper cervical technique will help. In the short term, for a ton of things, upper cervical technique will help. And so this might be where you hear about someone, there have been people that have been brought out of comas by an upper cervical manipulation. We have a professor actually that is at the school, and he said, and he's an upper cervical doctor because of his experience like this, but he said he was in, I believe he was in Vietnam, and when he was when he was in Vietnam, he was having terrible vision problems. He was going like colorblind. He was having terrible dizziness. He was having all these issues. And he said one day he went into a barber shop, and they were cutting his hair, and he was mentioning he had these terrible upper cervical problems. He was mentioning he had these symptoms, and the barber in Vietnam pulls him through and throws a cervical. I was like, what the hell? Like, this is crazy. This is wild. But he said he ran out because he thought he was trying to kill him. And then he came back in. He was like ready to kill the guy because he thought he was going to try to kill him. And he was like, hang on, like, this pain's gone away. I can see right. What did you just do? And so there begins this whole story for this professor that we have at school. And it's an incredible story. And there's so many stories like that. It's just because this area up here is so packed with receptors and various nerve signals to the brain that if it's affected, if it is properly taken care of, and if it is out and then it is put back in, stands to say that there's going to be a pretty good chance that some of those symptoms, definitely at least in the short term, are going to be reduced to some degree or another. So it's quite interesting. And honestly, I mean, the stories of students at the school saying, I had an autoimmune disease. There's a girl in my class that had a sham low back surgery at the age of like 16 because she had a blown disc, and they're like, we gotta go in and surgically fixate it. And she's been like screwed this whole time. So like, I mean, she's working through it in school, but like, it's not pretty, Like, a lot of people feel like they have been run amok by the medical system, and so that's why they're at school. But anyways, back to BJ Palmer. So this guy made it something that was real, made it science, and he definitely tried to bring us back closer to this medical model. But there were so many people, especially after BJ Palmer died. I believe he died in, I think, Sanford, Florida, of some kind of cancer. I forget what type of cancer it was, but he did die. And he passed away at something like 1960. And when he died, there was a giant push because there were a lot of chiropractors that were very upset with him trying to lead us back closer to the medical model. They wanted, because they grew up in this D.D. Palmer time, and they said, we want to be chiropractic, we want to be our own thing. We don't want to be part of this big medical model making people sick, right? And so there were a lot of laws being enacted. And there were a lot of states at this time that were allowing chiropractors to practice, and they were trying to set up, what exactly their laws should be. And they said, and the state legislators said to these chiropractors, they said, what do we want to do here? Like, what do you want to practice? Do you want to have anything to do with medicine? And they said, we don't want to prescribe medication, right? And then the laws come out and they say, oh, okay, chiropractors are not allowed to do anything with medication. And they're like, oh, wait, we want to be able to coach people on medication, talk about medication. They said, no. If you're not willing to prescribe it and you don't have the ability to prescribe it and make sound decisions on that, you cannot be recommending things about medication, which makes sense. And then these guys kind of accepted. They were like, oh, fuck, like we kind of jacked up here. And it wasn't ever really able to go back. And the other big thing is that they further tried to distinguish and decipher themselves as chiropractors versus osteopaths and MDs that kind of went down this road. And they didn't do a lot of research. And the early guys were definitely, Life University taught this for a number of years. And they said that, you can cure AIDS, you can cure HIV, you can cure cancer, you can cure a whole bunch of shit with just an adjustment. And that's wrong. That's not right. It's not true. I am sure that someone has, maybe to a degree, had their cancer helped in a way, possibly, with chiropractic. I'm sure it's happened somewhere. I have yet to read a case study on it personally. But I'm going to tell you right now, it's not like that's a proven way to take care of it. It's just not. The best thing chiropractors do is mechanical low back pain issues. That is like bread and butter of a chiropractor. That and cervicogenic headaches. Like, if you want to bring a patient into my office, like 9 times out of 10, they will be able to be helped to a significant degree with those issues if they see a chiropractor, right? So, anyways. So chiropractors are further trying to distinguish themselves. They're like, it's pretty much chiropractic versus the world, and they're trying to hammer down. They're trying to make their own thing while Western medicine's going this way. And they don't really do much research. And they make a bunch of crazy, stupid claims like I just told you. We can heal HIV, cure AIDS, cure cancer with a certain upper neck adjustment. All philosophy. It's the innate, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's like, what? It doesn't make sense, right? And I don't blame you for being a little bit skeptical in the beginning. Of the hell. So anyways, not a lot of research is done. They're super into philosophy and they're leaning way into it. And there's not a whole lot done in terms of science and research, right? And the other thing, they don't have big pharma in their back pocket. These DCs over here, they don't have big pharma in their back pocket. Funding studies, paying for studies. And no one in the profession at the time cared about studies. They were like, through the innate and through the adjustment, we can heal all. They just didn't care to figure it out. So, anyways, a lot of ridiculous things came out of that. In chiropractic's defense, it has been something that has been around for roughly 100 years and been known as chiropractic for 100 years. We talked about the bone setters before then. But it's still very much in its infancy in terms of a profession, right? And a lot of people stand to profit off of it, and so they just want to make sure they keep their profits, and so they don't really care about a whole lot, right? Which is frustrating, because that means a lot of people don't want to do research. A lot of people don't want to do research, you're not really going to advance the profession. So, Western medicine, if you look at Western medicine, everything that was Western medicine, all the way back to, like, the bubonic plague, everything up until the early, pretty much the discovery of penicillin was, the huge hit, right? And then they figured out, holy shit, and they started doing a bunch of research and all that. My point is, that has been around so much longer and had so much more time to develop than chiropractic has. And chiropractic is this little thing that, just like psychology, it's this little thing that's been around for, maybe 100 years. These guys have had thousands of years to perfect this and figure out what's going on with their medications, with this, with that, with all this stuff, right? It was actually a time in history where people really didn't like doctors. And I feel like we're kind of going back to that because it's just kind of getting screwy. Anyways, so for the amount of time that's been around versus what they figured out, it's been substantially better than the Western side and how long they've had time to figure out what's going on. But then also, as soon as Rockefeller came along, they legally broke up his monopoly on the oil, right? He then went in and he invested a ton of time, effort, and money into these universities to create medicines, right? And that was his next big thing, was to create modern medicine as it is today, right? So that paved the way for a ton of pharmaceutical companies to help with that research. And my point is, chiropractic doesn't really have that. If chiropractic doesn't really have that, and a lot of the earlier guys didn't really, care about it, they were busy trying to define themselves as a cult because it was all the way up until like 1980 or something like that. That in the state of Louisiana, if you were caught practicing chiropractic, it was illegal. You went to jail. There are reports and there were people that we learned about in chiropractic school up in the 1980s in Louisiana. They practiced chiropractic, they get thrown in jail. And it happened like a dozen times before they were like, fuck it, we're just going to go to Florida. And Florida, like, obviously had way better options. Or Texas or somewhere else, right? Which is crazy. So there's this big part of the profession that is like, legally we have to be a religion and we have to hold to that because as a religion, I can adjust you as part of my religion and it's technically not illegal. That's crazy, yes. But that's a big part of the reason why chiropractic is kind of forced into this corner over on this side of like trying to define itself, decipher for what it wants to be, and then define itself, decipher what it wants to be, and also be able to practice legally. I think that's the best way to put it. Because, again, like, up until the 1980s, like, Louisiana, I mean, it was, like, 1986 or something. I don't know exactly, but 1980s, I mean, you were still arrested for practicing as a chiropractic physician there. So, a lot of these old cats are definitely still trying to make it like a religion and a cult because that's how they grew up. That's how they saw it, right? So, let's go into, modern chiropractors are still crap, right? Wrong. Modern chiropractors are a PT on steroids. That is the best way to put it. A modern chiropractor has more scope of practice, because I looked this up when I was deciding where I want to go. A modern chiropractor has more scope of practice in most states than a doctor of physical therapy. A doctor of physical therapy is basically your person that helps you exercise and stretch and strengthen certain muscles and all that stuff. They do learn some forms of manipulation. They do not have a why behind it. They do not understand why they do it. They do not have the correct line of drive. And they do some really goofy, hunky-dory setups. I've seen them, and I've talked to some people in the schools, and they're like, yeah, we don't really know why we do this. It's kind of this thing that we're like, we just like have to learn it. It's like special populations. Like, you just have to learn it. Like, I don't know why we're doing it. I don't know what it is. So that would be like me saying, oh, well, I am now the best at treating a geriatric population when I took one class on special populations and one class on geriatric patients. Like, okay, I don't really know much about them. But if you were to go talk to a medical doctor or a doctor of osteopathic medicine that chose to specialize in geriatrics, they're going to be better at it. They're going to be way better at it because they know what's going on. They know how to take care of those patients. They know how to handle those problems, right? I'm not the best at it. That's like a PT can adjust. They don't really know how to. A DO, it's optional in their school to learn adjustments now. A DC is your bread and butter when it comes to adjusting a lot of physical therapy things, and they're able to do more things in terms of talking about supplementation, rating prescriptions. I mean, like, obviously that supplementation is a huge thing, and performing like labs and things like that set chiropractors apart from like a PT, because a PT, the last time I checked, is not going to be prescribing, is not going to be, running out ordering you labs. A lot of times PTs, someone walks into a PT's office because their primary care sent them there because, they might have mechanical low back pain and they don't want to, put them on gabapentin forever, right? So, or maybe the gabapentin's not working, or it's been 5 years and they're still having problems, whatever, right? So they send them to a PT. They're like, I don't know what to do with this. And a lot of it is outpatient after, surgery. Like, you would probably want to go to a PT then. So, a little bit more cramped down of a scope. But the modern chiropractor is like a PT on steroids. They have a little bit more scope of practice. They do everything the PT does. We actually take PT boards in a lot of states, plus our own national accreditation boards as well. Think about that. So, quick intermission. So, a modern chiropractor is someone that very much wants to look at the research, that wants to understand it, and wants to be better, such as myself, right? We look at the research, we try to understand the research, and we try to see what's better. Here's the problem, right? There ain't that much research out there. There's not! It's still going to take another 10, 20 years, maybe even more, before we have decent research that says, this is good, this is bad, this is shit, this is not shit. Like, we don't really totally know yet. And that's kind of that frustrating point of, like, it's like this growing pain of, like, we want to be more involved in the research. We want to be accepted in the medical community, in the medical model. We want to do good things to the patients. We want to try to help them. But we don't totally have all the research yet, because we haven't had the same time that the MD program and the DO program in Western medicine has had to figure out. They've had years to figure out and determine this antibiotic is good for this. This antiviral is good for this. This medication is great for, I don't know, fibromyalgia. Like, pick a problem, right? We don't quite have great research that says this type of chiropractic treatment over this time period for this amount of patients has this outcome. Like, we don't totally have that yet. A lot of it is relatively inconclusive. However, a lot of what we are taught now today is take your clinical experience, which you should from any field of doctor. Take the research. What does your clinical research say? What does your experience say? And there's, like, one of the things, like, what does the patient say? What does the patient want? And, like, that helps make your evidence-based chiropractic treatment, right? And so if you can perform as much of that as possible, you're going down the right road. So do we have everything figured out? No, we don't. And a lot of times you go to a chiropractor and you're going to say, what are the chances that you're going to be able to fix my whatever? A lot of times I can't say for sure. And that's the other thing that I want people to understand is sometimes the best people in their field are the ones that are the most unsure. Someone like no-name Gary Brecka is out there saying, oh, well, someone has had, headaches for 20 years. Well, they just need a little bit more salt water. No, they don't. I have no idea what the brain chemistry of that patient is. I have no idea what their hydration levels are. I have no idea what their sodium potassium levels are. I have no idea what their calcium levels are. I'm not going to say, oh, just go take that. Like, if sometimes the people that are just able to seem the most sure are actually the liars. Because we have people like a doctor that teaches us. His name is Dr. Krabby. He is an incredible nutritionist. He's a master nutritionist. He's a doctor of nutrition. He has all of these. He has like literally a paragraph of like, and he doesn't put them there because he's like 40 years old and he's like, I don't care about this anymore. But I mean, like, after his name, he's probably got like a paragraph of those little like LLP or whatever, like, that are accreditations and verifications and certifications he has taken for all of like dietary nutrition, because he wanted to figure out, he wanted to learn it. And he is like, if you ask him something, he's like, for 90% of the stuff, he's like the most uncertain person that you'll ever ask on the topic. Because he's like, well, this says that this works, this says that this works, and this says that this works. So, what's the real answer? Yeah, we don't really know. It's probably something along these lines, but we can't say for sure. That guy's like one of the best in the field. And he's saying he's unsure. Gary Brecka telling you this is your problem because he, I don't fucking know, dude. Gary Brecka telling you this is your solution because he thinks that this is your problem and he's just able to confidently say it. That's not the case. AG1s is not going to fix your pancreatitis, Gary Brecka. So yeah, chiropractors are a little bit unsure. And it's actually a good thing, because if you're so sure about something, you're probably lying through your teeth for 90% of things. For some things, it can work out quite well, right? So, what have we covered? We've covered B.J. Palmer, which, made chiropractic into what it is and developed it. D.D. Palmer, which is the founder and the discoverer. Yes, he did found it through a seance. But it has become something so much more than that. It split a lot from the large medical model that went another path when they were trying to say that they were a religion so that they could find a legal loophole to practice chiropractic, which set us behind in terms of our ability to do research and actually know what exactly we are doing. It is significantly changing now, and people are writing research, people are learning the research, people are reading the research, people are applying the research, and more research is being done because of it. Unfortunately, we don't have Big Pharma in our back pocket to say and fund these massive, beautiful studies that say that this is a tier 1 level study that absolutely says that this is a definitive treatment for XYZ. We don't have that yet. We don't have Big Pharma in our back pocket. More people are still leaning into research. We're still figuring out research. We're still trying to figure out what the best way to do the research is for these biomechanical issues for the most part, right? So, chiropractic has a long way to go still. It has come a long way, but it is not quite as bad as people make it out to be. And here's the last thing I'm going to close with. 95% of our academia that we learn in school as a chiropractor is the exact same, almost verbatim, of your MD programs and your DO programs. And they're going to say, oh, even if they're taking the same class, that's bullshit. Dude, we have fucking cadavers, okay? Half of medical schools have fake cadavers. We have real cadavers. We're looking at the real, tertius brevis, whatever, palmaris longus muscle. Like, we have, cadavers, and we're saying, we have, lab tests, and we're like, identify this muscle. Oh, that's the vastus medialis. Identify this muscle. That looks like that's the PCL, right? And they'll put a pin in it. You got to go up there and you got to figure it out. Like, we're doing the real shit. We're doing these things. And a lot of people want to discredit the academia because we don't quite have all the research behind it. The reality is there's antibiotics and things that are being used that we don't quite have research on either. But you feel it's inherently safer because of the programming for it, so to speak. Anyways, so yes, a lot of the information that we learn is the exact same. And I was quite concerned about that when I went to school. And I talked to a DO friend, and we literally, for 1 year of school, for the first year of medical school, we both took the exact same classes. Like, literally the exact same classes. We just took more adjusting classes than they did. So technically, we had more hours in class than they did. Anyways, but gross anatomy, yeah, we're probably going to go a little bit more in depth than your MD and DO classes will, right? And I can verify that because I have friends in those other programs, and we definitely go more in depth. As far as things like toxicology is the only class I really learn anything about antibiotics and pretty much anything about medication. Yeah, not a tough class. Pretty, surface level stuff. It was not that bad. Even veterinarian school, right? And MD and DO programs. That is like one of the toughest classes you will ever take. By a long shot is what people tell me. Our toxicology program compared to that, yeah, it was a joke. It was a cakewalk. But also, I'm not legally prescribing medication, so I don't really need to know the difference between this antibiotic and that antibiotic. I mean, I know that like fluoroquinolones can potentially have an increased effect of vertebral artery dissection that we talked about over here, this vertebral artery. If you're taking a fluoroquinolone for something like 30 days at a X dose, yeah, it can potentially raise the chances of a vertebral artery dissection. It is possible. But, I mean, I'm not learning everything about fluoroquinolones, Like, I just know that one little thing, and that's, like, it. Like, a regular medical student might laugh at me for that, and rightfully so. Like, I'm not prescribing that medication, you are, right? So, there is differences as far as the depth of knowledge, like biochemistry, we do not go that deep. I am not going to be prescribing medications. I need to understand a lot about, the biomechanical processes for things like making glucose, like stuff like that. Like, I need to know that, but I don't need to be understanding everything about every single enzyme and P405 enzymes and all this and that. Certain receptors and stuff like that I need to know quite a bit about. We do go quite a bit deeper into neurophysiology than your MD and DO programs do, because we're working with the spine. We're working with a lot of that. We are working with a lot of that nerve flow and nerve conduction. We are trying to optimize that from the brain, that is currently missing from this one, down into the body. That's what we're trying to do. It's what we're trying to learn. So we learn way more about that. We learn way more about, eyeballs, for example, all the pieces of the eyeball and how the eyeball and saccades can affect, different things from PTSD to autism to ADHD, and how you can see basically into the nervous system through someone's eyes, right? I mean, it's a huge thing. Do I know as much about it as like an ophthalmic? I don't know. How would you say that? I don't want to say ophthalmoscope. That's the thing you look in the eyes with. An optometrist. I probably don't know about eye surgery as much as an optometrist does, but I do know enough to figure out, hey, this is the issue and this is what's going on, right? And as far as your MD and DO programs, yeah, we go way more in depth than they do on it. Way more in depth. 100 times more in depth, right? And we have way more classes. Like a third of our classes this trimester were like all about adjusting and orthopedic testing and all things like that. Developing a differential diagnosis. Like, we're doctors through and through. Legally, morally, and like ethically, we are doctors. I cannot say it enough times, and it honestly gets really annoying rehashing the same thing to people about, like, yes, we're doctors. It's just that the large medical model has made us out to be this devil because we've been slow with the research. We've been behind with it. We have labeled ourselves as a cult until like 40 years ago, when we were finally all like, okay, had like legal ability to practice, right? So it's getting better. And a lot of us in this generation of chiropractors and this generation of doctors, we're PTs on steroids. We are someone that you can come to with a lot of your problems, and we also do a lot of different testing. I mean, everything from a stool test and helping you understand your gut microbiome better, your allergies, why are you having heart palpitations? I mean, we can have a way more in-depth view on that stuff, and we're also more like your holistic practitioners. We're still trying to figure out where exactly we fit in the medical model. We want to be accepted into it, and we want to be a part of it. It's just going to take a little bit more research to get there, because we kind of just got started on the research in the past like 20 years with chiropractic. So we got a little bit of time to figure it out, but it's still doctors, 100%. And that is the common myths that I see with chiropractic. So I hope this helps you understand where chiropractic started, why it kind of became this different medical idea, medical model, and why it is a little bit bastardized compared to your typical Western medicine. So, thank you guys for listening. This is a long one. This one's 48 minutes almost. Jesus. So, thank you guys for listening to this. Thank you for sticking through the whole thing. I appreciate you. If anyone has issues with, well, right now we're just doing coaching because I am not yet a licensed physician in the state of Florida. I will be soon, but not quite yet. So, right now we're just doing coaching, anything that pertains to coaching. If you want to get a better body, if you're trying to lose weight, gain weight, if you might have some goofy issue that I can help you as far as your personal trainer, let me know. I am more than happy to help you. I've been doing this for I don't know how long now. I've seen all kinds of goofy issues, and I'm more than happy to help you and walk you through what's going on, even if it's just an eval and an initial intake and telling you, oh, I think this is actually what it is. Because there's some goofy shit that I've caught that, I mean, someone went to 4 or 5 doctors and they're like, I don't know what it is. They come to me as their personal trainer. I'm like, oh yeah, I think that's probably a mechanical low back pain issue. You should do this clamshell movement. And they're like, oh my God, it's better. I don't have to take gabapentin anymore. I'm like, that's that's crazy, you know. So anyways, just a thought. But anyways, if you need help, feel free to reach out. I love you guys. Take care. Hopefully that helps you understand chiropractic a little bit better. Peace.